Dol Guldur. A dark power dwells in there, such as I have never felt before. It is the shadow of an ancient horror. One that can summon the spirits of the dead.
Dol Guldur, translated, means the Hill of Sorcery. It's a fountain of evil.
Dol Guldur, there was a danger on that set. I mean, it was full of violence and horrible, and there was underground passageways overgrown with hanging skeletons and black blood everywhere, I seem to remember, and not pleasant at all.
The evil that spreads across Middle-earth seems to be emanating from that place.
The Necromancer is up to things in Dol Guldur, and he corrupts the greenwood, changing the greenwood to the Mirkwood. So this healthy forest becomes a dangerous forest.
Gandalf in The Hobbit is pretty central to the story, but he's not there all the time. He sets up the journey that the dwarves and the Hobbit go on, and then he's often away doing other business, and quite what that is not revealed in the novels.
You're not leaving us.
I would not do this unless I had to. So Peter's promise was that we would, in the films, get to see what Gandalf was up to when he wasn't on the journey.
It appeared that Gandalf had been to a great council of the White Wizards, masters of law and good magic, and that they had at last driven the Necromancer from his dark hold in the south of Mirkwood.
When Tolkien was writing The Hobbit, the stronghold of the Necromancer, he wasn't named, but in The Lord of the Rings we find out it's Dol Guldur, the Hill of Sorcery.
What is it?
It's an old Númenorian era fortress that has been taken over. Fortress that's gone to ruin, gone to wreck and ruin, and been taken over by something very evil in the last few hundred years.
The Númenorians, they were a race of high men, an ancient human civilization that was a little bit of a riff off the Atlantis myth. This incredibly sophisticated, powerful culture exerting a huge influence on the world, but ultimately falls.
Many of the oldest structures of Middle-earth were originally Númenorian, very, very ancient strongholds and cities.
So they built a number of sort of architectural marvels like Minas Tirith, Orthanc, Cirith-Ungol, Minas Ithil. Though the interesting thing is that Minas Ithil and the Black Gate were originally built to protect their kingdom from Sauron. The irony is that Sauron eventually takes them over and repurposes them, and it's this concept that Peter runs with Dol Guldur.
It would be quite normal, in a way, for Dol Guldur to be an abandoned fortress that the Númenorians leave behind, because we have places like that up and down the river, like the Argonath, which has the enormous statues there of the old kings. Well, perhaps further up the river there was a Númenorian outpost which could be taken over. One reason why Sauron takes an interest in it is because it's near the Gladden Fields. And he knows that is where Isildur lost the ring.
And Sauron was so obsessed with the ring that he wanted to be close by the river where the ring had been lost, so he could keep an eye on that location and obviously search for it himself. And also a place where he could hide away. A place of secrecy and kind of overgrown by trees. So as far as anyone else knew, it was a completely abandoned fortress.
From here it seems no more than a ruin, but it looks completely abandoned.
As it is meant to.
Peter's idea was to have it growing up out of the forest so that you could actually almost arrive in it without realizing that you're in a building, because you're still amongst the trunks of the trees in the forest.
Because it's on the side of a hill, the forest sort of follows the contours of a hill, so
they could enter it and then they go in a door and they come through a door and come down. As you come down, you're into even a more subterranean area where all the trees are.
This idea didn't play right through into the finished result because you don't get amazing wide shots if your castle's entirely submerged in forest.
Like everything that we've ever done in these Tolkien movies, we've always tried to make a key location, such as Dol Guldur, and make it quite visually distinctive. I always want to start with a silhouette that's distinctive, so it's memorable, and that you can immediately look at different silhouettes of different locations throughout the film, and if you've seen the movie once, you can go back and identify which each of these is supposed to be. And so the silhouette of Dol Guldur, we wanted it to be a remnant of what it originally was. You know, it's like it was once a fortress on a hill, and it's a kind of eroded away. The whole chunk of the hill has kind of collapsed, and trees have grown up in amongst all the ruins, and so we're trying to get that horror. It's like something that's decomposed at the back, and you don't realise it is till you go around the back.
It's so decayed and rotten. It's that analogy of it's like a rotten tooth. It's deeply diseased as an environment. So not the sort of place you want to hang around, really.
It's like a bee's nest or a wasp nest that's had the side taken off it, you know, so you can see inside this huge castle that has a grim past.
From a design point of view, looked at Piranesi. Piranesi was a 18th century artist who produced a series of fantasy drawings of crumbling ruins and dungeons, which were really quite striking. They're very kind of vertiginous, lots of staircases and weird structures. So some of the first drawings were quite in that spirit, and a little bit of the spirit of MC Escher as well. These labyrinthine structures. It's almost as if it's built to kind of mystify anybody who kind of wanders in there.
Another influence on Dol Guldur would be what the 19th century did with the worst of its neo-Gothic architecture, where it had abandoned any pretense of the originality that the medieval period contained and recreated a sort of industrial Gothic with this kind of lack of humanity and, sort of suffocating and uncomfortable. It's basically a big haunted house.
It's not true Gothic in any sense, but fantasy Gothic, it definitely is going down that track.
What I would suggest we do is we start just banking bits of Dol Guldur, because Dol Guldur we need a lot of different bits and pieces, because I think we'd be better off to say, okay, if this is a stairs, we'll have that in one corner of the set, and now we'll build this and this, so that everything acts as a shoot-off for each other.
It's always very satisfying when the bits that you've hinted at in a concept drawing end up being translated into a set. And here you can just sort of walk around in the middle of it. It's all around you.
Yeah, and this was quite an amazing set in the way that it came together, because it had to be assembled in a matter of days. Everything was just pieced together like a jigsaw puzzle.
So one of the really early concept principles for this set, and for the whole of Dol Guldur really, was that it would have a very strong triangular influence. I think the angles, they have a sort of dynamic, it's an evil dynamic. I'm not saying triangles are evil, but they sort of nurture a feeling of discomfort, which is where we were trying to go.
Probably its closest comparison would be with Cirith Ungol in The Return of the King. And that's a similar use of angles and these kind of strong triangular doorways.
Yeah, that sort of oppressiveness comes from the fact that everything is leaning in on top of you, but it's been built that way. Yeah. And you're trapped, in a sense. You're in it, and you're not quite going to get out.
Dol Guldur, it's uncomfortable spiritually and uncomfortable physically. It's been strapped back together with old bits of iron hammered into the stone.
The theme of these iron bands, which we imagine basically hold a lot of the structure together, is another discomfort, if you like, in the architecture itself, because the addition of iron on stone is never a happy one, because the iron and the stone just don't go well together. It's like putting a dirty bandage on something.
It's also forming these little kind of cages in which people are imprisoned and just left to kind of rot down, really. The other element that we put into most of the sets were evidence of torture and chains and shackles and all that kind of thing. So I'm not too proud of myself with this, but this is a little kind of device I invented. It's really just an unspecific kind of torture chamber device, which I don't want to think about too much. I just made it look as kind of creepy as possible.
Alan's quite a creepy. You wouldn't know it. You know, debonair, soft-spoken, well-educated, but welcome to Alan's dark side.
Dol Guldur was essentially an architectural manifestation of the character who inhabited it.
Peter did mention, you know, it is Sauron. It's his decorating style, slightly eclectic, but sort of Middle-earth sort of evil, I guess.
Everyone loves this time of year, don't they? When they hang their corpses up in the cellar.
What I didn't imagine when drawing it was just quite how dressed out with all this creepy stuff it was going to be. To me, it was just spikes and vines and architecture. So all this stuff is really nothing to do with me. It's a great bonus to have very imaginative set dresses. It's great.
Too many mistakes. Too many mistakes, and that's what happens. They become set dressing.
One of the camera guys came up to me one day and said, "What's the deal with Dol Guldur? Is there like, does Sauron have a caretaker that just spends his day hammering skulls to the walls?" Because who else does it? Sauron obviously doesn't. He's not that guy. So what we figured is, yeah, there's like this macabre caretaker.
There is definitely a feeling of threat and evil and things you don't want to touch.
We conjectured that there may well have been a Palantir in there.
There was a story point at one point in the scripts where we needed to give Gandalf a sense of urgency to get to the mountain. That involved the mechanic of a Palantir.
The Palantir, which, you know, obviously features really strongly in Lord of the Rings, they are a communication device.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
And very ancient in origin. There's a handful of them left in the old Númenórean strongholds, like Minas Tirith, Minas Ithil, and Dol Guldur, potentially.
I recall Gandalf was intended to touch the Palantir, and he would get visions of what might come to pass if he didn't act quickly.
And the vision that he would see was Smaug leading armies into battle for Sauron. Legions of orcs, super cool stuff, real end-of-the-world stuff. Just hell on earth.
Gandalf in the appendices tells the story of the Hobbit from his point of view, about how he was concerned that Smaug and Sauron could form an alliance, and that the dragon could be devastating.
In the end, we realized we didn't need it, and so I think it's left there for keen-eyed fans to spot.
The courtyard of Dol Guldur has 9 staircases.
Did they ever shoot up here?
No, nobody's allowed to climb up there, John.
Really?
Because if you climb up, you can't get down.
Yeah, I know. I came down the other day, working my way down. It's really uncomfortable.
You always have to compromise between the ability to use a staircase and how evil and difficult you can make it look, you know. And a staircase has, a proportion of tread to a riser that makes it comfortable for humans. But if you sort of beef those proportions up a bit, you change them round a bit, you can make it look very uncomfortable.
So dangerous steps in the world.
They are indeed. You get sort of harness. It wasn't easy, and walking down was even harder.
On each of the three sides, we have these 3 bays with the 3 staircases, which adds up to 9. So each of the ringwraiths has an allotted little kind of cubbyhole at the top of those staircases.
9 for mortal men doomed to die.
We knew that around this time, as Sauron was growing in strength and in fact inhabited Dol Guldur, that his greatest servants, the Ringwraiths, were there as well.
The Ringwraiths are very much associated with that look of the black-cowled figures in the Fellowship of the Ring. As Saruman says, the 9 have now taken the form of riders in black.
The 9. They crossed the River Eisen on Midsummer's Eve, disguised as riders in black.
Which means that they've basically just chucked a bit of whole black cloth over their bodies. What we're getting to see in The Hobbit is what they're like without the bit of black cloth thrown over their bodies.
The Ringwraiths were 9 kings of men who were given the gift of magic rings by Sauron. And through these rings, they gained certain powers, but they also gave up a piece of themselves.
Now they are slaves to his will. They are the Nazgul, Ringwraiths, neither living nor dead.
In Dol Guldur, we had a chance to see these guys, and not just see them as we had done before as either robed figures or the White Kings, but to see them in their armor.
The designs of the Ringwraiths are meant to reflect their origins, and their origins span much of Middle-earth, especially those parts which we don't get to visit in Lord of the Rings or in The Hobbit.
In the Return of the King, we do see the Witch King with his armoured helmet, but rather than have 9 clones, we wanted to create 8 other sets of armour.
In fact, Tolkien named only 2 of his wraiths. There was the Witch King of Angmar, of course, who was their leader. But then he also went on to mention that when the Witch King was slain in the battle, that Camul the Easterling, his lieutenant, stepped in to take his place. So there was an opportunity to create a Ringwraith that had Easterling design elements in his costume.
You should have stayed dead.
They were from a great range of different backgrounds within Middle-earth. There's belief that they were Gondorian lords or Númenórean lords. One of the characters that I focused on was actually a lord of the Haradrim. So what I tried to do was tie a lot of the iconic elements from the characters that you see in Lord of the Rings, but definitely more aggressive.
With the Ringwraiths, we were all having a go and throwing things in, and bizarrely it kind of worked out that almost everybody in the design room got 1 Ringwraith to their credit.
When we finally see those Ringwraiths, we can point out, oh, I did that one, and it was quite cool. It doesn't always happen.
Nick did one, Dan did one, Andrew did the Witch King, Greg Tozer did one, and that proved to be a very successful process because what ultimately comes out of it is this ensemble cast of unique characters that all feel as one within Middle-earth but unique in their own right.
You have no power here, servant of mortal God.
Depicting Sauron was difficult because you are depicting the undepictable. And generally when you're depicting the undepictable, you don't depict much at all.
It's a strange element in Tolkien to make the guiding force of the evil powers shapeless and unseen. Not invisible, but unseen. But then, in a way, that's what Tolkien thought about the nature of evil. He keeps insisting throughout his works that evil is not creative. It is an absence. It's a negative force. And so that fits Sauron. But we have to remember that at the time The Hobbit was written, there was an enormous backstory.
Sauron is one of the Maya, one of what we would call the angelic spirits.
But there were others. Balrogs are examples of another type of Maiar. The wizards were also Maiar.
Sauron could appear in any guise he wanted early on. At first, Sauron likes to take the form of a beautiful figure that he used to deceive and trick the elven smiths into making the rings of power in the first place.
Each time Sauron's defeated, it sort of gets worse for him. After many defeats, he can no longer take a fair and seductive shape. He can only take an ugly shape. After his defeat in the Battle of the Last Alliance, he cannot take any shape at all.
Sauron is reduced to nothing but spirit, nothing but insubstantial malice.
For a entity, whether good or bad, to be so unbelievably powerful that they're the most powerful thing, almost godlike in their status, then the second you try to really put your finger on a design or a look or a definitive, this is who this is, it's almost always going to disappoint you. I mean, it just will. There's nothing more powerful than the imagination.
From out of the darkness, a necromancer has come.
The first Hobbit movie, we looked around, we're trying to make him some sort of a black hole or a void or a sort of a thing that sucks light in. I think it'd be interesting if we could pull off just him looking very like a black hole. It'd be good to do some concepts for what that would be like.
I threw one in there which was almost like he had a vaguely humanoid shape that was a hole in space and time, but I thought maybe on the periphery there might be anguished or screaming faces that you would get glimpses of.
And then Gus Hunter started to design an entity of smoke and light and dark and negative space where it would suck up the world around it.
It's hard because you're just ending up with a black hole, so it was one of those situations where it can look quite good in artwork, but when you execute it on film, it doesn't work. The one we ended up with, we were aiming for that and we didn't quite get there, but it didn't really matter too much because it was just the tease.
In the Desolation of Smaug, Gus did a number of illustrations where you'd see the Necromancer that had these sort of tendrils coming around, almost like smoke or ink tendrils, and I think Weta Digital played around with that idea.
We're kind of down to the last couple of days of the animation on Hobbit 2, and the thing that we're trying to get working now is this epic sort of battle between Gandalf and the Necromancer in Dol Guldur, and there's all these kind of crazy tendril-y effects.
Eventually, I wanted people to know who it was to invoke the character that we knew, and the armoured figure we'd seen at the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring, as well as that flaming eye motif, and were so much linked with him.
One of the ideas was that you see Sauron arrive in his armor and he inverts and becomes the pupil of the flaming eye, and so you have that connection between the two.
Overall, we wanted to have this aspect of the eye. The human form in the middle forms the cat's eye slit pupil of the eye, and then the shape of the flames form the overall form of the eye. So that's how Sauron makes his final appearance in Dol Guldur.
After the battle at Dol Guldur, something that came up in the script was this little excursion that Gandalf takes into a part of Middle-earth that we know almost nothing about, and that's the Sea of Ruin.
That came from an idea where Sauron's fled into the east. Gandalf should follow him. I mean, you know, this is his mortal enemy.
The Sea of Ruin is basically a dried up inland ocean. I was really excited. I imagined the Sea of Ruin being this sort of petrified landscape. If you could imagine waves that come crashing on the shore and suddenly solidified into these sort of overhanging cliffs and all of that in the midst of a totally flat plain, so the plain would be flat and it would drop away into this really, really tortured landscape.
And then Peter wrote a scene with this kind of huge rock. Sauron would climb up with Gandalf pursuing him. and then Sauron would kind of disappear into a fissure in the rock at the end. I came up with the idea that it might have been some kind of seeing seat. A seeing seat like the one at Armitage.
We were so excited at the mention of the Sea of Rune, and it would have been incredibly exciting. Unfortunately, Gandalf doesn't pursue Sauron.
We didn't want to weaken Gandalf's character, but then what we really ultimately began to realize is that was such a simple fix. It's just Saruman saying, leave Sauron to me, which in effect is what he does do in the book of The Lord of the Rings.
Go now. Leave Sauron to me.
I used this courtyard set that we built as a kind of module to help to build the rest of the digital environment. Out there beyond the green screen, there'll be other ruins and a distant view of the forest and a turbulent sky.
The skies were really important to Peter. There was a lot of research on skies and different cloud formations. The clouds from Strath Tyeri were referenced a lot in the final shots.
Our first location in the South Island that the main unit visited was Strath Tyeri. Those parts of the country do get extremes in weather, and it gets affected by these crazy winds and weather patterns coming from the north, south, east and west. Which is why these places look stunning, surreal, and have these amazing skies that were coming in.
Strath Tyeri, central Otago. Incredible skies in this place. I don't know what it is. It's, wow, over there it's pretty awesome.
They were like close encounters sort of skies. It was, yes, we were about to be visited by somebody from another world. And I think Peter got some footage of them and was going to use them in the movie.
Where our skies are a little boring, we'll probably replace them with these cool skies. I'd love to do that, get some real mood into it.
In trying to build a broken down castle, it's really good to start with a not so broken down castle so you can actually understand the space and have a logical view of it and where the towers are and how things kind of fit together.
I did make attempts to kind of work out a complete and intact version of Dol Guldur, just to make it easy for everyone to kind of build the structure essentially.
What that allows us to do is it gives us better tools for blocking out the shapes that we're trying to get to. If we have a really nice stronger tower, then we can build that tower, and then, in most cases, we'll end up reusing that tower several times. Then we just do broken down versions of it, so we rip chunks of it off and open it up so it looks like it's been there for a long time.
Some sets you're building, you actually didn't know how tall or wide it was going to be or how it interacted in the global picture of it. And it was, once I got into the post world, I realised how big it was.
Every time you see a wide shot of Dol Guldur, you're not really seeing any sets. Obviously, all the wide shots, it's completely digital.
We had to make Dol Guldur look as evil and nasty as possible. It's like the cancer that sits at the heart of Middle-earth, really, and all the bad things that are happening are just emanating from this rotten core.
Go back to the boys from whence you come!
The events at Dol Guldur with the vanishing of Sauron does have a lot of echo in The Lord of the Rings.
Dol Guldur survives the end of The Hobbit, but definitely by the time of The Lord of the Rings, dark forces have returned to the tower. It's used by the Nazgul to launch attacks against Lorien, attacks against the Wood Elves.
It's a canker that sits in between two great kingdoms of elves. And it's a strong staging point for Sauron's armies. And after the War of the Ring, Galadriel is the one that breaks Dol Guldur finally.
Galadriel threw down its walls and laid bare its pits.
When all is said and done, and Dol Guldur has been cleansed by Galadriel, Celeborn and Thranduil meet and cleanse the whole northern region again.
And on the day of the new year of the elves, Celeborn and Thranduil met in the midst of the forest, and they renamed Mirkwood Erin Las Gallen, the Wood of Green Leaves.